Today is the 18th of March 2013. My name is Ben Fielden, and this interview is for Ming-Ai London Institute Chinese Workforce Heritage Project. Could I begin by asking your name?
Christine Yao.
And could you spell that for me?
ChristineYau.
And whereabouts were you born?
Hong Kong.
And could you tell me a little bit about your family?
My family, we have a house in Fanning, a small village in Hong Kong. Actually, it is at the top of the village. My father and mother, they didn't do much work. My father was came back from Jamaica after a long spell. So he bought some land and built a house. And it was a very happy time for me, but very simple.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
An elder sister and a younger brother, so 3 of us.
And what work did your mother and father do?
They didn't do a lot of work, but we had quite a bit of land, and they employed people to help farm the land. They were part of it, you know.
And what education did you have?
Equivalent to A-level.
And whenabouts did you come to the UK?
When? November 1985.
And what was your reason for coming to the UK?
I've always liked UK. I've been to London for many times, and I decided that's the place I wanted to settle. And then my niece came over for education, and that was the right time to come over to see my future husband then.
Where did you live when you first arrived?
Much to my surprise, instead of living in the place we chose, we ended up in Wembley, because my husband then told me it was a much bigger place, but I hated it. So we moved after about 10 years. After about 2 years.
And what was the first job you had when you came to the UK?
I wasn't going to work, but I was offered by Cathay Pacific to work, but I didn't like the shift work, so I didn't take it. And I started doing property development, so I was quite happy with that, until I bumped into 2 friends who eventually persuaded me to start a restaurant, by mistake, of course.
So what motivated you to work in the catering sector?
Well, as I said, it was a mistake, not something I really wanted to do. I was led to believe, I only have to invest a bit of money, and I could just enjoy myself, eat and drink, and didn't have to be involved. Of course, it was quite the opposite.
How did you find opening your restaurant?
In the beginning, it wasn't so bad then, because I have 2 partners. They've been here for a long time. They were friends, not really good friends, but I knew them. So with them helping, so it wasn't very difficult. But I think after they left, a year after we opened, then they left, I found it very difficult.
So you talked a lot about the initial struggles when you opened it up, that some of it might not have met your expectations that you had. So what challenges sort of developed after it opened?
I think in the beginning, what I found difficult was trying to raise financial support for these 2 friends. I had a bit of money, for my share, but I have to go to the bank. And being very new in the country, wasn't easy, but I managed. So it was slightly unexpected. Then the 2 partners and I started the restaurant. After 1 year, decided to leave. I was a little bit stubborn, I should have let them take over instead of me taking over their shares. It was very difficult. I was an outsider, a woman in the area. Hasn't been easy. Just everything was working against me. But I guess, it's my determination. I stayed on.
Do you think that it was harder, you being a woman at that time?
At that time, yes, certainly. It was the reason.
And how have things changed over the past 26 years then?
Completely changed, I think. People now have a more open mind, or rather, women knows their rights. And women, will not take nonsense anymore like we used to.
And how about your clientele? Has that changed over the time that your restaurant's been open?
The fourth generation of lots of clients are coming. Of course, there has been change. People moved out of London, and of course we have new clients. But I'm very happy to say that I have quite a number of customers. This is their fourth generation.
And have things become more competitive over the years?
Certainly, there are more restaurants, more competition. Not apart from that, the rent has gone up, the business rate has gone sky high, and the food cost is very high, but the price remain more or less, the same. So it is very competitive.
So alongside the rise in rents and such, do you think that the congestion charge has had an impact at all on your restaurant?
It certainly has affected Chinatown. That is not only the congestion charge, and because of the parking has gone very high. Not only that, and then there are more mini Chinatown opened up around, over the years. So you find Chinatown in North London. What's the area? The O2 Centre. What area do you call it? And then quite a lot of areas, they have shops and restaurants. They don't need to come to Chinatown like they used to do. So because before, most people would come to Chinatown for shopping, for the necessary shoppings, and to have a meal. But now they could do it, in the area, in the neighborhood area.
And what was your relationship with your customers like?
Friends. I think, most of my customers, we become friends. I have no problem at all, with my customers. And I would say they've been very kind and very patient with me.
Have you ever had any experiences with difficult customers?
Yes. In 20 years, I think I managed to ban 2 people from the Wyoming. 2 men, they came in and they were impossible, they were so difficult. Nothing was all right. So at the end, I said, there's no bill for you, but I won't like to see you again. Goodbye. They never came back.
And can I ask if you've ever faced any racism whilst working at your restaurant?
No, not at all.
And your relationship with your employees, what has that been like over the years?
There has never been any problems. Of course, sometimes we have arguments. It's just like family. You argue with your parents, you argue with your sister or brothers, but at the end of the day, you are family. I guess I'm quite lucky in that.
And have there ever been any accidents at the restaurant?
I've been thinking about that. There was one accident, but I wasn't there. Somebody tried to run away without paying the bill, and he was tackled by a customer, so he pinned him down. And he had to pay.
What difficulties did you face managing Wyoming, and what motivated you to keep going, especially at the beginning?
In the beginning, it was very difficult dealing with the kitchen staff. You employ a chef and they will come with their own people. And there was the constant threat of salary increment. Every now and then they will say, okay, you know, we want more money. If you don't pay us, then we will not come back. So that was quite threatening. Then, you know, I decided I couldn't go on like that. So I changed my menu. I did my research and I changed my menu, the dishes that I enjoy, the dishes that I know. So then my kitchen staff have to cook the dishes that I know, not depending on them. So I started employing staff separately, not as a whole group. Not saying to the chef, right, okay, you can get your helpers in, you know. I will employ them individually and ask them to stick to my menu. So anybody who's got some experience, then they can do it.
And have there been any major turning points whilst you've been there?
Major turning point, yes. In 1996, by then, you know, I've been there for 10 years. I quite welcome a break. And 3 gentlemen from Chinatown wanted to take over my restaurant. So I said, fine. So we signed the lease, I think in February. But because I was waiting for my time to go back to Hong Kong in 1997 to see the change, to hand over. So I went up to the Chinese Community Center to be a volunteer. So I think that was a turning point for me.
And you mentioned in the media that there've been a number of myths and stigmas surrounding the Chinese when they first arrived in the UK. Do you remember any of them? And were you personally affected by them?
No, it's all about hearsay. You know, they used to accuse the Chinese of pinching ducks and goose, you know, from the parks and cook them in the restaurant. Or customers, you know, would come in with a dog and the dog would disappear. Of course, you know, not realizing that the dog is actually, you know, the beef on the table. I mean, it's all hearsay.
And there's also been instances where Chinese restaurants have been tied to things like foot and mouth disease. How have you dealt with these sort of criticisms in the past?
It was a very grave mistake that the Chinese were accused at the end. We organized a protest. Actually, it was quite a big protest. I think at the end, you know, they realized it was wrong. He did apologize. The minister then, you know, did apologize. But things happened, you know, it's nothing. At the time, it was certainly not good for the Chinese business. But these things passed, you know, once the truth came out, then it's all right.
And you talked about making your own menu for the restaurant. What sort of inspired you to do that?
In Hong Kong, we used to eat out all the time, practically 3 meals a day. You know, sometimes we have breakfast meetings and then for lunch and dinner. We're very busy all the time. So we used to eat out a lot. And I do have the passion for food. And particularly the northern cuisine, not Cantonese, because in Hong Kong it's mainly Cantonese. But I enjoy northern dishes very much. And I had a very good friend. She's a Beijingese. She's from Beijing. So we used to cook, we used to talk. And that time in London, the restaurants are mainly serving Cantonese. So I thought it was time for me to do something I really enjoy. Though, of course, I was running a restaurant, but not the kind of dishes I like to serve. I went around to most of the restaurants that time. It's all the same, beef in oyster sauce, black bean sauce, and all that. And of course, Chinese cuisine is more than that. and we have 76, 74, 76 region in China, and each region had their regional food. So I decided that I want to introduce something different to my customers here. So I switched most of my menu to northern dishes, and I sent these recipe to Beijing, asked my friends to send it to Beijing to talk with the family, and ask family to talk to the restaurant to make sure if it's not 100%, at least it's 95% accurate. And much to my surprise, it worked.
Has the impact of that been quite positive on your restaurant?
Very positive. Then, of course, it was quite unusual to see these dishes like ta sai mi. Ta sai mi is a lamb dish. In fact, the translation is it tastes as sweet as the honey. Ta, it tastes like, the honey. So the press was very curious. They've never seen, menus like that or a name like that. So I think it worked very well for me. They started writing about my restaurant.
You mentioned one of the main turning points was when you begin to volunteer at the community centre. How do you manage to juggle the responsibilities of running a restaurant and yet being so actively involved in the Chinese community?
When I stopped, I had the time. That's why I went up to the centre. Then I started to get involved with the community. But unfortunately, instead of trying out the restaurant for 3 years by these 3 gentlemen, then they decided they couldn't carry on after a very short period. But it was very difficult to negotiate with them because although it's a 3 years contract, before I went to Hong Kong, I was told that I have to take it back. So I said, it's impossible. I bought my ticket. So I went to Hong Kong, and then I relaunched the restaurant as soon as I came back. I had to refurbish the whole restaurant and relaunch it again. But then, I was sort of involved with the community work. A bit difficult in the beginning, and then I have the staff who's been working with me for a while, and then they were quite prepared to help out more, to do more. So I managed that. And of course, then over the years, I'm very lucky. I've been very lucky with my staff. I have a manager who's now been with me for 17 years. So I practically leave everything to him with the restaurant. But of course, I'm there, most of the days. I go in to make sure things are running all right. Then, I could do other work.
So what motivated you to get more involved in the community?
I guess once I was involved, things just come naturally. And of course, that if people realize that you're capable or you're responsible, then you tend to get a bit more work. So built up that way over the years.
And whereabouts did your attitude and ethics concerning work come from?
As a child, my parents were very strict, particularly my father. He's very Victorian. We were not allowed to talk at the dinner table. We were not allowed to talk when we are in bed, and you must get up at a certain time. You must go to church, every Sunday. Very regimental. I think it's from there.
And that's all the questions I have for you.